Imagine waking up before sunrise to the sound of rain hitting a tin roof somewhere deep in the hills of Missouri or northern Arkansas. The fire in the wood stove has almost burned down to nothing. You can see your breath inside the house. The woodpile outside is smaller than it should be for this time of year, and breakfast depends on what was left over from yesterday or the day before that. No grocery store nearby, sometimes not even a paved road leading out. After heavy rain, parts of the Ozarks could turn to mud for days at a time. Some families learned early to keep enough food in the house to last a while because getting more wasn't always simple. Most of what people ate in the Ozark Mountains was never written down anywhere. These were meals repeated so often, nobody thought much about them anymore. Meals built around whatever could be grown, dried, hunted, canned, or stretched one more day. By February, some pantry shelves already looked thinner than people hoped they would. Cornbread and milk. Sometimes supper was nothing more than yesterday's cornbread crumbled into a glass of cold milk or buttermilk. By the second day, the cornbread had hardened around the edges, but milk softened it enough to eat slowly. One pan of cornbread often stretched across several meals. Across rural parts of Arkansas, it showed up on the table almost every day in one form or another. Children scraped the bottom of the glass with a spoon to catch the last crumbs. This wasn't comfort food. It was a way to make something last. Fried potatoes and onion. Potatoes stayed buried in root cellars through winter, where the ground kept them cool long after the weather turned cold. Onions hung from hooks near the kitchen wall. Together they went into a cast iron skillet with saved bacon grease, often the same skillet used for nearly every meal in the house. The potatoes browned slowly while the onions softened underneath. Heavy, filling, cheap. In the hills of Missouri, some families ate this before daylight because logging camps and field work started early. A hot breakfast mattered when the day ahead was going to be long. Kilt lettuce. Once the ground started thawing, wild greens appeared before almost anything else did. Poke shoots, dandelion greens, watercress along creek banks. People in the Ozarks knew which plants could feed you and which ones had to be handled carefully. Young poke shoots were boiled more than once before anyone trusted them enough to eat. Older women sometimes carried small knives in their apron pockets while walking fence lines or feeding animals, cutting greens as they went. The greens were wilted in hot grease with vinegar and sometimes a little bacon. After months of canned food and salt pork, something fresh and green mattered more than people usually said out loud. Beans and cornbread. Pinto beans simmered for hours on the back of the stove, sometimes with a ham bone already used once before, sometimes with salt pork that needed cooking before it spoiled. By evening, the broth had thickened and turned cloudy. Cornbread broke apart beside it to make the meal feel larger than it really was. Children learned early not to reach for too much meat from the pot. The flavor mattered more than the portion. Across parts of rural Kansas and the Ozarks, beans were one of the few foods that could feed a large family without much money at all. Tomato gravy. There were days when meat simply wasn't there. Grease and flour went into the skillet first, then canned tomatoes, salt, and black pepper. The gravy was poured hot over biscuits or stale bread. The tomatoes added color and sharpness to meals that otherwise felt plain and heavy. In many Ozark kitchens, shelves of canned tomatoes lined entire walls by late summer. A full shelf in October didn't always mean much by March. Every jar represented work already finished before the cold arrived. Leather breeches beans. In some parts of the Ozarks, people called them shucky beans. Green beans were threaded onto heavy string and hung from porch rafters until they dried hard and brown. By winter, they barely looked edible anymore, but cooked slowly with pork fat, they softened again. The flavor turned deeper and earthier than fresh beans ever were. Drying food this way cost almost nothing, and in places where cash was scarce, that mattered. Flour gravy and biscuits. Some mornings there wasn't much left besides flour, grease, salt, and whatever milk was still in the house. The gravy was pale and thin, the biscuits dense from cold hands working quickly before daylight. But it was hot, and that counted for something. Men ate quickly before leaving for work. The skillet was scraped clean afterwards so the grease could be saved again beside the stove. Very little in an Ozark kitchen ever went unused for long. Squirrel stew. When gardens failed or money disappeared entirely, the woods filled the gap. Squirrels were common across the oak and hickory forests of southern Missouri and northern Arkansas. Young boys often learned to hunt early because empty cupboards were not unusual. The meat was tough and full of small bones, but cooked slowly with potatoes and onions, it stretched into a meal that fed more than one person. This wasn't considered unusual, it was simply part of getting through winter. Sorghum and bread. If there was anything sweet after supper, it was often sorghum syrup poured over bread. Dark syrup with a smoky taste, refined sugar didn't have. Sugar cost money. Sorghum could be made closer to home. In some Ozark communities, families brought sorghum cane to local mills every fall, where the syrup cooked down slowly for hours. Small sweet things carried more weight during hard weeks than people probably realized at the time. Possum and sweet potatoes. And during especially lean winters, the meals changed again. Possum appeared on tables in some households, roasted slowly beside sweet potatoes to soften the strong flavor. People ate what the land gave them. The smell filled small cabins for hours, while cold air slipped through cracks in the walls. Some meals stayed quieter than others, not because the food was unfamiliar, but because everyone understood what it meant to be eating it again. Cracklin' bread. After hogs were rendered down for lard, the browned cracklings left behind went into cornbread batter. Nothing from the animal was wasted. The bread came out salty, dense, and heavy with fat, enough to replace meat for another meal or two. Across the Ozarks, families saved buckets of lard for winter cooking. The cracklings were simply what remained after everything useful had already been taken. Meals were often built from whatever was left after something else had already been stretched thin. Apple butter and biscuits. By late October, apples cooked down slowly in large kettles outdoors for hours at a time. Apple butter days often brought neighbors together. The kettles were large, the stirring took time, and cold weather was already getting closer. The finished apple butter lasted far longer than fresh apples ever could. Spread across biscuits in the morning, it became breakfast for weeks. In many Ozark households, winter preparation started long before winter actually arrived, and most meals in these hills followed that same pattern. They weren't created for cookbooks or family traditions the way people think of them now. They came from isolation, thin harvests, long winters, roads that disappeared into mud, shelves that had to last longer than expected. Most of these meals disappeared once people no longer had to live this way. But for the families who did, they weren't unusual meals. They were just supper.